There are moments in life when certain messages seem to arrive at just the right time, not by chance, but as if guided by something far greater than coincidence. You didn't click on this video by accident. What you're about to hear has not been given the spotlight by mainstream outlets, nor has it been welcomed by institutional voices that often prefer to keep mysteries buried. But sometimes even the quietest whispers demand to be heard. A few weeks ago, an unexpected message made its way to me. It came from a priest living in the countryside of Canada, a man not famous, not controversial, but deeply rooted in prayer and spiritual life. What he shared was so powerful and so unsettling that I found myself unable to sleep for several nights. At first, I questioned its authenticity. I researched, cross-referenced, and prayed for discernment. And finally, I realized this wasn't something to keep to myself. It wasn't something to sensationalize either. It was a message that deserved to be approached with humility, care, and an open heart. Before we go further, I want to ask you something, not rhetorically, but sincerely. Are you prepared to hear something that may change how you view the world around you? Because once you understand what you're about to discover, it may alter how you look at everything: your choices, your beliefs, and even your understanding of the future. If you're not ready, there's no shame in stepping away. But if something deep inside tells you to stay, then take a breath, and let's begin. The story begins in a small, snow-covered town in northern Canada, quiet, remote, and unassuming. It was there that a boy named Michel Rodrigue came into the world, the 23rd child in a humble family that held tightly to their faith. From a young age, he was different. Not strange or odd, but marked by a kind of sensitivity and spiritual awareness that puzzled even those closest to him. At just 3 years old, he spoke of things no child his age should have known, describing future events in the lives of family members with unsettling accuracy. As he grew, so did the mystery surrounding him. At 16, Mitchell experienced a vision that changed the course of his life. It was of a man he had never met, a saint who had already left this world before Mitchell was even born. That man was Saint Padre Pio. The encounter was vivid, clear, and unlike anything he had ever experienced. Yet, despite the power of that moment, Mitchell didn't run toward the calling of priesthood. In fact, he resisted it. For years, he tried to walk another path, hoping perhaps that the spiritual experiences would fade. But destiny has a way of finding those it chooses. It was during a night of quiet prayer in 1987 that everything shifted. Mitchell described what happened not as a dream, but as an encounter. A light, gentle yet radiant, enveloped him, and a voice spoke not harshly, but with clarity and authority. It said, "My child, I have not chosen you because of greatness or perfection. I have chosen you because there is a time ahead when I will need your voice." That moment didn't erase his doubts, but it gave him direction. Eventually, Michel Rodrigue answered the call and entered the priesthood. His ministry was shaped not just by study or tradition, but by a deep sense of spiritual responsibility. He served quietly, even taking on roles that required profound courage and compassion. But what sets him apart is not his title, nor his location. It is the content of what he says he has received through prayer and contemplation. In recent years, he began to share certain messages, reflections that many found deeply thought-provoking. Among these were descriptions of coming societal changes, spiritual challenges, and personal calls to renewal and faithfulness. He spoke not as someone predicting doom, but as one urging people to open their eyes and hearts to deeper truths. One of the most striking aspects of his message is its consistency with other historical writings, many of them buried in dusty archives or dismissed as relics of a bygone age. When I began to compare his reflections to the writings of saints and mystics from centuries past, I saw a pattern emerge. Take, for instance, the words of a Benedictine monk named Edzo of Montier, who lived during the 12th century. He wrote of a future time marked by confusion, when clarity would vanish and reality itself would seem to bend and blur. People, he warned, would struggle to tell the difference between what is real and what is illusion. Mitchell, though never exposed to these writings, describes our era as the age of deep confusion, a world where the truth feels distant, and even those seeking it are unsure of where to look. The 16th century visionary Mother Mariana de Jesus Torres, in a faraway part of the world, foresaw a time when those entrusted with guiding others would fall silent, and strange patterns would emerge in nature both physically and morally. She described a world where people would be drawn to distractions so powerful they would lose their inner spark. Centuries later, we can't help but reflect on how today's technologies, though marvels of innovation, have also become vessels of distraction. Another connection appears in the writings of Blessed Catherine Emmerich, a mystic from 19th century Germany. She spoke of a future, false spirituality that would masquerade as truth, but would be hollow at its core, a movement that would speak of peace and unity, yet ignore what is sacred and eternal. Her words weren't intended as fear-mongering, but as a plea to stay grounded in what is true and life-giving. Even Sister Lucia of Fatima, one of the visionaries who witnessed the famous Marian apparitions in 1917, wrote in later years about what she called a spiritual fog, a disorientation that would reach its peak during a time when people around the world would be more connected than ever before. That time is now. What makes Michel Rodrigue's reflections stand out is not just their alignment with these past voices, but the way they are framed not as threats, but as invitations. Invitations to return to sincerity, to pause and reflect, and to search for meaning beyond the surface of modern life. In the next part, we will explore how these insights connect to current cultural shifts and what they might reveal about the path ahead. But for now, let this be a moment to ponder not in fear, but in curiosity. What if what we're experiencing is not the end of something, but the beginning of a deeper awakening? As we explore the connection between ancient insights and contemporary spiritual messages, one thread becomes undeniably clear across time and distance. Voices from different eras seem to echo one another. Though they lived centuries apart, the mystics and visionaries of the past appear to have tapped into the same wellspring of divine wisdom as those speaking today. Their language may have differed, their surroundings unilike, but their hearts were drawn toward something eternal. During a private conversation with a confidant of Father Michel, someone who has stood beside him for years in silence and prayer, I was entrusted with something extraordinary. A small envelope, sealed in wax and marked with a handwritten instruction. Do not open until June 2025. The request was clear, yet something about the urgency of the times weighed on me. The world feels as though it's shifting rapidly. Events are accelerating, questions are multiplying, and silence no longer feels like a faithful option. With a heavy heart and a clear conscience, I opened the envelope ahead of time. What I found inside was more than just ink on paper. It was a list of 7 distinct signs said to unfold before a worldwide spiritual event, described by Father Michel as a universal awakening. These signs were not vague metaphors or poetic language. They were specific, measurable, and chillingly recognizable. 5, as I soon realized, had already passed. 2 seemed to be unfolding right now. The first sign spoke of a health crisis that would alter the very way people interacted, leading individuals to cover their faces in public settings. We lived through this. It became a global norm, streets filled with masked faces, communication reduced to eyes alone, all in the name of collective protection. Though years have passed, the memory of those strange, quiet days remains vivid in our minds. The second sign warned of a rising tide of division not across borders, but within homes, families, and communities. Brothers would turn against brothers, not always in violence, but in ideology, resentment, and distrust. Over the past few years, this has been impossible to ignore. Communities have fractured, long-standing relationships have crumbled, and social harmony has been tested like never before. Next came a prophecy about the natural world itself, a prediction of climate irregularities and inexplicable weather patterns that would challenge even the most advanced scientific models. And sure enough, we've seen it. blistering heat waves in unexpected places, record-breaking storms, floods in deserts, and cold spells during traditionally warm seasons. Meteorologists, normally confident in their forecasts, now speak with caution and hesitation. The fourth sign pointed to a reshaping of the global economy, where systems of exchange would gradually move into digital frameworks, centralized, trackable, and increasingly dependent on technology. Today, we stand at the edge of a new financial era, as the rise of digital currencies, cashless transactions, and global economic restructuring becomes part of everyday conversation. Then came mention of unusual activity in the sky's celestial events that would mark a shift in the natural order. In recent years, scientists have logged unexpected surges in meteor activity, mysterious solar flares, and anomalies in the magnetic field of the Earth. Astronomers are both thrilled and unnerved by the pace of change. The sixth sign, which now seems to be rapidly unfolding, described a society increasingly dependent on advanced technology, so much so that the line between reality and simulation begins to blur. The meteoric rise of artificial intelligence, wearable augmented devices, and experiments connecting the brain directly to digital systems has begun reshaping how we think, work, and relate to one another. And then comes the seventh and final sign, a global conflict involving three influential powers. Though it is not fully visible, some believe we may already be witnessing the early tremors, diplomatic rifts, shifting alliances, and military posturing that point to tensions just beneath the surface. Whether this last sign is now upon us remains to be seen. But according to Father Michel's confidant, once all seven signs begin their course, they are not meant to be spaced out over generations, but fulfilled within just 5 years. It was in 2018 that Father Michel began sharing what would become his most widely discussed message, a profound and mysterious event he refers to simply as the awakening. Unlike anything we've experienced before, it is not a catastrophe, not a punishment, and certainly not an end. Rather, he describes it as a deeply personal moment of clarity, a divine encounter that every person on earth will simultaneously experience. Imagine this. You awaken on a normal morning. The sky looks familiar, the world seems as it always has. Then, in an instant, time halts. Everything freezes. You are no longer in your room, in your car, or at your desk. Instead, you are somewhere indescribable outside yourself, yet more aware than ever. In this place, you see your life unfold before you, not just your actions, but the ripple effect of those actions. The words you spoke, the choices you made, the love you gave or withheld, the moments you stood firm and the times you faltered. It is not a punishment, but a mirror, a full unveiling of the soul. According to Father Michel's writings, during this experience, each person will feel both the immense love of the Creator and the deep sorrow for the ways we've caused harm, intentionally or not. This awakening is not about shame. It is about realization. It is meant to stir the heart toward transformation, and it is only the beginning. Following this universal moment of clarity, there will come a short but crucial season, approximately 40 days. A time of peace unlike any before. Churches, regardless of denomination, will overflow. People will flock not out of fear, but out of a newfound hunger for truth, for connection, and for healing. Broken relationships will mend. Forgiveness will pour forth like rain after drought. People who had long turned away from faith will begin again, quietly, earnestly, and with conviction. But this window will not last forever. As the memory of the awakening begins to dim for some, the world will face its greatest trial: the arrival of a charismatic figure, polished, persuasive, and promising solutions to every problem. This individual, according to the reflections of Father Michel, will rise not with weapons, but with ideas. He will speak of unity, of innovation, of healing the planet, and ending suffering through science and social harmony. He will seem to be everything the world has longed for: a leader who brings calm in chaos, progress in stagnation, and hope where there was fear. His solutions will be powered by technology, so advanced it will seem magical. Hunger will be addressed with synthetic foods. pollution cleaned with machines that work like miracles, conflicts eased through data-driven diplomacy. It will all seem perfect. But Father Michel's writings urge discernment. For what looks perfect on the surface may conceal a deeper cost, a slow, subtle surrender of freedom, conscience, and spirit in exchange for comfort and control. And as we will explore in the next part, the path forward will require each of us to choose not between good and evil in the traditional sense, but between authenticity and illusion, between truth that challenges and comfort that deceives. As we continue tracing the unfolding story of spiritual preparation and divine messages, one detail grows ever more pressing: the speed with which events are expected to move following what has been called the awakening. According to these reflections, the time that follows this moment of illumination will not stretch endlessly into the future. Instead, the window for response, the opportunity to reorient one's life, will be brief. Within a matter of months, humanity may find itself at a crossroads where clarity must meet conviction. Father Michel's reflections point to a startling possibility: that the world as we know it may undergo a transformation so rapid, so complete, that many will feel as if they've stepped into another reality. Cities once vibrant with movement and noise may fall silent. Financial systems, which now power every transaction, every marketplace, may be upended entirely. The technology we've come to rely upon, our devices, our electricity, our digital networks, could falter or cease altogether, whether by design or by consequence. In such a scenario, the question becomes not only how would we respond, but how would we endure? It's a sobering vision, but it's not one without hope. Far from it. Father Michel has also spoken of places of refuge, not symbolic or metaphorical sanctuaries, but real, tangible spaces where peace will remain when the world around seems lost in turmoil. These places, he says, are not chosen at random. They are being prepared, some by individuals who may not even fully understand why they've been moved to act. Whether in a remote village, a quiet forest, or even within the walls of a monastery, these sanctuaries will offer protection. They will be hidden from those who wish harm, and will remain unseen by those whose hearts are close to grace. And when the time comes, the faithful will not have to find them alone. Divine messengers, angels, will guide those whose spirits are awake to these places of shelter. This vision of spiritual refuge echoes what many mystics have described over centuries. In each generation, voices have emerged to remind the faithful that even in the darkest storms, there will always be safe harbors prepared by divine providence. In our time, Father Michel reminds us that preparation is already underway. Quietly, invisibly, people all over the world are being stirred into action, building, planting, praying, not out of fear, but out of a deep inner prompting. Yet, another warning runs parallel to this promise of refuge. It is the idea of a period of false calm, a deceptive peace that will lull many into a sense of false security. According to these reflections, there will come a time when global leaders, governments, and institutions will offer impressive, even miraculous solutions to the world's most pressing issues. Conflicts will seem resolved, economies may bounce back, illnesses might be treated with newfound breakthroughs. It will feel like the dawn of a golden age. But beneath the surface, something else may be at work. This false peace, while attractive on the surface, could serve as the final stage before more challenging trials begin. And perhaps this is what makes the year 2025 so significant in Father Michel's timeline. Take a moment and look around, observe the sudden promises, the rapid technological solutions, the global enthusiasm for a better world built on innovation and convenience. Coincidence? Or the very pattern that was once foretold? Even so, none of these messages are shared to instill fear. Quite the opposite. At the heart of every warning lies a deeper message: hope. After the time of tribulation, Father Michel, like many mystics before him, speaks of an era unlike any we've seen in recorded history. A time not defined by scarcity or division, but by harmony, peace, and spiritual renewal. This age is often called the era of peace, or the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, and even the new Pentecost. In this future, humanity will live in balance not only with nature, but with one another and with God. Disease will be rare. Generosity will become the norm. Families will thrive, and community will be restored. The earth itself, once strained by greed and excess, will breathe again. It will not be a return to the past, but the beginning of a purified future, a time when faith is no longer a quiet whisper, but a shared truth. Importantly, many mystics from various centuries, people who never knew each other and lived in vastly different cultures, all speak of this same hope-filled era. Their collective voices do not speak of destruction, but of transformation. You might be thinking now, why should I take these messages seriously? After all, the world has seen countless predictions of calamity. Many have come and gone without fulfillment, and you are absolutely right to ask questions. Healthy skepticism is not only wise, it is essential. Even the Catholic Church, which recognizes the value of private revelations, approaches them with deep caution. Discernment is key, and no vision, no prophecy, is ever placed above the Church's teachings or authority. Father Michel himself honors this principle. He does not demand blind belief. He doesn't seek attention. In fact, what sets him apart from many who claim to receive divine messages is precisely his humility. He lives simply, dedicating his life to service in a monastery he helped establish in the quiet lands of Canada. He does not sell books, he does not tour with lectures, and he does not profit from his words. Instead, he prays, he listens, and perhaps most tellingly, he submits everything he receives to the judgment of the Church, even when that means remaining silent. During the course of my research for this video, I encountered another extraordinary realization. Father Michel may not be the only voice receiving such messages in our time. I found evidence, clear, verifiable instances of other individuals across the globe who are sharing insights that mirror his. From Europe to South America, from small parishes to hidden prayer communities, at least 7 other contemporary figures appear to be receiving messages that match both in tone and in substance. These people don't know each other. They don't speak the same language. They have no shared network. And yet, they are all describing a series of events that align astonishingly well: the same spiritual urgency, the same emphasis on inner preparation, the same call to trust in divine timing. The odds of such a pattern forming by coincidence are extremely small. I'll be honest. When I first heard about these revelations, I was skeptical. I've encountered many theories over the years, many of which never amounted to more than rumors. But as I investigated Father Michel's life, something changed. His words were not coated in sensationalism. His tone was calm, deliberate, rooted in love. And the more I looked around at recent events, the more I saw connections that gave me pause. Which brings us to the most important question of all. How should one prepare? According to Father Michel, preparation begins not in the pantry, but in the soul. He insists that spiritual grounding must come before any form of physical readiness. His first and clearest recommendation is reconciliation with the Creator. For those within the Catholic tradition, this means sincere confession. For others, it means turning wholeheartedly toward God through whatever spiritual path they walk. What matters most is intention and sincerity. Secondly, he suggests assembling a simple yet meaningful set of spiritual tools: a crucifix, holy water, blessed candles, and enough non-perishable food to sustain you for a few weeks. Not out of panic, but as a gesture of foresight and faith. These are not magical objects. They are reminders, anchors, symbols of light in moments of uncertainty. Most importantly, deepen your prayer life. Make space each day for silence, for reflection, for listening. According to these messages, those who remain prayerful and attentive will recognize the signs when they come. They will not be lost in confusion, because their hearts will be guided from within. Interestingly, the spiritual recommendations found in Father Michel's reflections are not isolated. They align with the guidance shared by mystics throughout history. Blessed Catherine Emmerich once emphasized unwavering devotion to the Eucharist as protection during a time of spiritual confusion. Father Michel says the same, encouraging believers to cling to that sacred mystery as a source of strength and clarity. Sister Lucia of Fatima often pointed to the Immaculate Heart of Mary as a spiritual refuge in times of turmoil. Likewise, Father Michel describes Mary as the Ark of the New Covenant, a motherly protector who will shelter those who seek refuge in her care. In the next part, we will go deeper into the significance of this spiritual battle and how ancient symbols long misunderstood may hold the key to navigating the future ahead. As we continue through these reflections, one particular teaching stands out, an ancient principle echoed by both saints and modern voices alike. In times of spiritual trial, the greatest weapon is not resistance through force, but the quiet strength of reparation and sacrificial love. This is not a new idea. Centuries ago, a remarkable woman known as Mother Mariana de Jesus Torres spoke passionately of the power of offering one's sufferings in union with divine mercy. She believed that during moments of great darkness, even the smallest act of personal sacrifice, when offered in love, could tip the scales toward light. Father Michel echoes this very teaching for our time. He urges people not simply to brace themselves for the future, but to step into it with purpose. According to him, we are not passive spectators in the spiritual battle unfolding, we are participants. Each kind act, each moment of forgiveness, each unselfish prayer or hidden offering carries more weight than we can comprehend. It becomes a light in the midst of shadows, a balm for souls far beyond our own. This message is not one of fear, but of mission. It is a call to live intentionally, awake, and rooted in charity. These revelations, as Father Michel makes clear, are not threats, they are invitations. They do not come to scare us into hiding, but to awaken us into living with clarity and depth. When storms of uncertainty begin to rise, it is not panic or prediction that will keep us grounded, it is prayer, compassion, and inner stillness. Those who approach these times with humility, generosity, and faith will find themselves steady when the world begins to shake. This does not mean the journey will be easy, but it does mean that peace is possible, even when circumstances are not. There is a kind of strength that is not loud or boastful. It is quiet, consistent, rooted in grace. That is the kind of strength we are being called to cultivate. Now, I want to pause here and speak to you directly, not as a storyteller, but as someone walking this path alongside you. I am not here to ask for blind belief. In fact, I encourage the opposite. Investigate, reflect, ask the hard questions, discern with care and wisdom. Faith that is not questioned rarely grows. These messages, these signs, they are not demands. They are guideposts meant to help us look deeper. Even Father Michel, despite the clarity of his experiences, reminds us of a timeless truth, that God never speaks without purpose, and when divine messages are given, they are always paired with time to prepare, time to respond not out of pressure, but out of love. History has shown again and again that every significant spiritual shift was preceded by a season of warning. The question is not, will this happen exactly as described? The real question is, how are we choosing to live right now? I want to share something personal with you. I don't know with certainty whether every single prophecy will unfold exactly as described. I don't pretend to know the hour or the specific shape of the future. None of us do. What I do know, however, is this: we are living in a moment unlike any before it. The pace of change, the atmosphere of uncertainty, the hunger for meaning, it all points to something stirring deeply in the human soul. These are not ordinary times. And in extraordinary times, we are called to live with extraordinary awareness. So now, I turn the question toward you. What do you think? What has your heart been sensing lately? Have you seen or felt signs that align with what you've just heard? Or maybe you've experienced something entirely different that gave you clarity or spiritual awakening. I invite you to share it. Leave your reflections in the comments. I read each one personally, and your voice matters more than you realize. Perhaps your story will strengthen someone else. Perhaps your questions will spark a needed conversation. Perhaps your insights will reveal another piece of this unfolding puzzle. Do not underestimate the power of your experience. You are not watching this by accident. You are here in this moment because something in you is searching. And if this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Pass it on to someone who might need it. A friend, a family member, someone quietly wrestling with questions they don't yet know how to ask. You never know what a simple act of sharing can do. Knowledge, when rooted in love, becomes more than information, it becomes illumination. It becomes a shield, a compass, a torch to guide others through the mist. So take what you've heard, sit with it, pray on it, reflect deeply, and above all, let it lead you to live with greater faith, hope, and clarity in the days ahead. As we move deeper into this unfolding journey, one theme becomes impossible to ignore. Preparation must extend beyond the moment, it must become a way of life. In the quiet spaces between these revelations lies a hidden call not only to react, but to reshape how we live, how we love, and how we perceive the world around us. Father Michel's reflections are not isolated road signs pointing to dramatic events, they are invitations to cultivate a spiritual posture of awareness in every moment, especially the ordinary ones. Let us consider something that often escapes attention amid discussions of prophecy: the power of daily fidelity. While the supernatural draws curiosity, it is the consistent rhythm of quiet, faithful living that actually builds the interior resilience necessary to withstand times of upheaval. In Father Michel's teachings, and in those of saints across the centuries, there is great emphasis on the domestic church, the sacredness of the home as a fortress of spiritual strength. In this light, spiritual preparation begins not in reaction to headlines, but in the sanctification of daily life. Meals offered in gratitude, moments of silence welcomed instead of filled, conversations rooted in kindness rather than contention. These, too, are acts of preparation, because when the soul is trained in stillness, it does not panic in the storm. It listens. Father Michel has also spoken of something easily overlooked: the importance of spiritual memory. That is, preserving the memory of God's presence in our lives through journaling, reflection, and storytelling. He encourages families to write down the moments, large or small, when they sensed divine protection, received unexpected peace, or witnessed prayers answered in quiet, mysterious ways. Why? Because when times of disorientation come, those written memories become like anchors. They remind us that what feels uncertain now has already been conquered in the past by divine faithfulness. Equally important is community. One of the lesser-known elements of Father Michel's vision is his emphasis on forming small, prayerful communities not out of fear or isolation, but as sources of strength, discernment, and mutual support. In a time when the world increasingly rewards digital connection over physical presence, he calls for a return to tangible fellowship. Shared meals, shared prayer, shared burden. Not everyone is called to build a refuge, but everyone is called to become a refuge to others. In fact, some of the most powerful spiritual protectors in history were not famous prophets or miracle workers, but ordinary mothers, grandfathers, teachers, and laborers who quietly carried light into their circles of influence. Father Michel's writings suggest that spiritual preparation is not a heroic event, it's a lifestyle. One made of small yeses to God, spoken over and over, day after day. In his reflections, he also draws attention to the role of spiritual authority, not in a controlling sense, but in terms of alignment with truth. He emphasizes the importance of listening to the wise and the faithful, especially those who lead lives of humility and service. But he cautions against chasing sensational voices, warning that in times of chaos, false guides will multiply, some charismatic, others fearful, all confusing. He encourages discernment rooted in Scripture, the sacraments, and the fruits of the Holy Spirit: peace, joy, self-control, gentleness, and love. Interestingly, Father Mitchell once shared a detail not widely known outside his circle of spiritual direction. In his early years of priesthood, he was deeply drawn to the simplicity of the Desert Fathers, the earliest Christian monks who fled to the wilderness not to escape the world, but to learn how to hear God in silence. He often returns to their writings and practices when guiding others today. Fasting, scripture memorization, extended periods of quiet. These tools, though ancient, he believes, are more relevant now than ever. He also encourages what he calls sacramental vision, the ability to see divine presence in the physical world. A sunrise not just as beauty, but as invitation. A stranger's kindness not just as coincidence, but as grace. He teaches that this awareness becomes essential in times of deception. When the false peace arrives, as he warns it will, those who have trained their hearts to see through a spiritual lens will recognize what lies beneath the surface. They will not be swayed by speeches or seduced by spectacle. They will see with clarity because they have spent years sharpening their interior sight. One particularly powerful metaphor he uses is the oil lamp. Just as the wise virgins in Scripture kept their lamps filled with oil in anticipation of the bridegroom, we too must keep our inner lamps lit. But he clarifies, oil is not emotion, it is not fear, it is not excitement over prophecy. Oil is virtue. Oil is daily faithfulness. Oil is the slow, steady flame of love for God that burns even when no one sees it. When the bridegroom comes, or when the world begins to shake, those with oil will have light, and those without it will stumble in confusion. In speaking with some who know Father Mitchell personally, I've learned that he is not drawn to drama or attention. In fact, he often declines interviews, preferring to spend his days in the rhythm of community prayer, teaching, and simple acts of service. Those close to him describe a man who speaks only when prompted by inner conviction, and who always prays before responding to requests. They speak of someone deeply human, joyful, gentle, but also incredibly serious when it comes to spiritual matters. And yet, despite his grounded nature, there is one recurring theme in his writings that remains both haunting and hopeful. The idea of divine intervention not as punishment, but as rescue. He believes we are not simply heading toward judgment, but toward a loving correction, a course redirection so powerful it will awaken even the hardest hearts. This moment, he says, will be remembered as a mercy, not a wrath. As a light, not a lightning bolt. This theme has been echoed across centuries by others. Saint Faustina, the apostle of divine mercy, once wrote of a spark that would prepare the world for the final outpouring of grace. Many now wonder whether that spark is already igniting. Whether the rumblings we feel around us, the social unrest, the hunger for meaning, the spiritual fatigue are signs of that divine invitation calling out across the noise. And so, if there is one message to take from all of this, it is not to run, not to hide, not to fear. It is to remain rooted, to remain prayerful, to remain in love with the God who has never stopped reaching out. There is a mystery unfolding quietly in the background of our daily lives, one that cannot be explained through headlines or statistics. It is not rooted in political shifts or technological trends, but rather in something deeper, an invisible current moving beneath the surface of human history. For those with eyes to see and hearts open to the spiritual dimension of reality, this moment is not just about global change. It is about the unveiling of the soul's true condition. One theme that has emerged from countless spiritual voices throughout time, but is seldom explored, is the idea that humanity is being gently but firmly drawn toward a collective interior awakening. Not through thunder or spectacle, but through subtle, daily prompts. Sudden moments of conscience, encounters that pierce the heart, quiet whispers that interrupt our routines. In Father Mitchell's reflections, and in the writings of several mystics from across the centuries, we are told that this interior pull is not imagination, it is preparation. The soul is being made ready for something far greater than an event. It is being made ready for a new way of seeing everything. And yet, in a world so saturated with information, noise, and urgency, the greatest spiritual danger may no longer be overt evil, it may be distraction. There is a strange kind of darkness that doesn't strike with violence, but seeps in through overexposure, leaving us dulled, passive, and uninterested in the things that once stirred our spirit. This numbness is not new, but what is new is how efficiently it has spread. Through endless scrolling, constant notifications, and the pressure to always be connected, our inner silence is under siege. Father Michel once remarked in a private conference that one of the most effective tactics used against the soul today is not denial of God, but the dilution of attention. The enemy of your interior life, he said, is not hatred, it is noise. And it is in that noise that discernment begins to fade. When every opinion carries equal volume, and every voice demands our belief, how can we know which path leads to truth? To this question, spiritual tradition offers a profound answer. Truth always bears fruit. Not the fruit of applause, nor the fruit of emotional stimulation, but the fruit of transformation. Real truth, when it enters a heart, brings peace, clarity, and a renewed desire to do good. And this is why Father Michel, and so many who walk in prophetic grace, caution strongly against voices that stir panic, provoke division, or promise secret knowledge for a price. In a time of confusion, the real messenger is never the one who shouts loudest, it is the one whose presence leaves you more humble, more loving, and more grounded in faith. This leads us to a dimension of preparation often forgotten in modern spirituality: beauty. Yes, beauty itself as a path to God. Throughout church history, beauty has always been a signpost pointing to the divine. In architecture, in music, in sacred art, believers have long understood that beauty is not mere decoration. It is a language. And in our time, many spiritual writers believe that restoring this sense of sacred beauty is essential not only to counter darkness, but to nourish the soul that hungers for transcendence. Father Michel has spoken of the importance of reintroducing sacred beauty into our homes and communities, not for nostalgia's sake, but because the soul needs reminders of heaven in a world that often forgets it exists. A candle burning before an icon, a hymn echoing through a quiet room, a hand-painted crucifix instead of a plastic one. These are not luxuries, they are anchors. He encourages families to create small spaces of prayer in their homes, what he calls chapels of stillness, where phones are silenced, and only the eternal is invited in. These spaces become not only refuges, but training grounds for discernment. Another fresh concept that has emerged in Father Michel's guidance is what he refers to as spiritual resilience. This is not merely enduring hardship, but developing the capacity to respond to crisis with faith rather than fear. It is the ability to remain joyful when joy feels impossible, hopeful when logic says otherwise. Spiritual resilience is cultivated not in dramatic gestures, but in consistency. Rising early to pray even when tired, refusing to gossip, choosing forgiveness instead of revenge. These decisions, though invisible to the world, forge a strength that no storm can shake. In his writings, Father Michel has also pointed to a growing phenomenon that deserves attention: the increase in what he calls spiritual anomalies. That is, moments where ordinary people without titles, without fame, are reporting dreams, visions, or interior messages that lead them to repentance, renewed prayer, or sudden conversions. He cautions that not all of these experiences are divine, but neither are they to be dismissed outright. Instead, he encourages individuals to bring such moments into prayer, to discern them with spiritual guidance, and above all, to measure their fruits. Does the experience lead to humility, to peace, to greater love? Then perhaps it was a spark from heaven. This idea that God is stirring hearts quietly across the world is one of the most hopeful elements in all these teachings, because it reminds us that the divine plan is not unfolding in distant cathedrals or secret conferences alone. It is unfolding in kitchens, in hospital rooms, in classrooms and alleyways, in the hidden, quiet places where faith is still alive. Father Michel has also emphasized a concept rarely discussed in modern faith circles: the restoration of innocence. Not in a naive sense, but in the recovery of wonder, of purity, of reverence for life. He teaches that one of the great tragedies of our time is not just moral confusion, but the loss of childlike awe. When innocence is mocked, when purity is scorned, society drifts further from the heart of God. But when awe is restored even in one soul, it creates ripples. He often quotes the words of Jesus, "Unless you become like little children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven." In the context of preparation, this means reclaiming a heart that is teachable, grateful, and attentive. It means letting go of cynicism disguised as wisdom. It means allowing ourselves to be moved again by the beauty of grace, the simplicity of truth, and the gift of life itself. And finally, Father Michel urges every believer to become a living invitation. That is, to become the kind of person who makes others curious about God, not through arguments or debates, but through presence. Through how we listen, how we forgive, how we serve without needing recognition. This is how we prepare not only ourselves, but the world around us. Because in the end, preparation is not only about surviving what comes. It is about becoming what is needed when it does. There's something about certain years that seem to carry a unique weight, a quiet echo that resounds even before anything dramatic occurs. To many who observe patterns in history, prophecy, and spiritual reflection, the year 2025 feels like such a time. Not necessarily because of one singular moment destined to shake the world, but because of a convergence of signals, subtle signs that point to a turning point, not of destruction, but of decision. Let us begin not with predictions, but with observation. Across the globe, people from every background are sensing a shift. It's not simply about geopolitics or economics, though those are certainly factors. It is something less tangible, more internal. A rising awareness that the world is not merely changing in function, but in spirit. This sensation has no particular language, no uniform expression. It manifests in conversations over coffee, in silent moments during sleepless nights, in the eyes of people who feel the world has grown louder, but not wiser. And in the midst of this, 2025 stands quietly, like the center of a wheel slowly turning. From a spiritual perspective, 2025 may be viewed as a threshold year, a period of crossing. Not an ending, not a climax, but a narrowing bridge where decisions, both individual and collective, begin to define the course ahead more sharply. Many mystics throughout history have spoken not in terms of final dates, but of seasons of the soul, when heaven leans a little closer and time itself feels dense with possibility. What's intriguing is how this aligns with something Father Michel once suggested during a retreat. He described 2025 as a year of reflection turned into action. He wasn't referring to global calamity or dramatic signs in the sky. Instead, he spoke of a kind of spiritual reckoning, a season when people would be invited to re-examine everything they had previously ignored or postponed. A year when the heart would feel the gentle but unmistakable call to awaken. To many, this might seem abstract. But if you look closer, you may find it already happening. In communities around the world, there has been a quiet but persistent return to the essentials. People are gathering in homes to pray, not because they are afraid, but because something within them hungers for connection to God, to others, to the truth. Simple churches are filling with people who haven't attended in years. Families are reconsidering how they spend their time. Young people are asking deeper questions. In the noise of progress, a soft rhythm is forming, a rhythm of renewal. If we consider the biblical rhythm of sacred time, there's a recurring theme of jubilee, release, and restoration at specific intervals. While 2025 isn't officially marked as a biblical jubilee in any formal calendar, it does represent a midpoint in the current decade, a moment perfectly placed between what has been and what is still coming. It is a moment to pause, assess, and choose with intention. Interestingly, some theologians have noted that this particular year aligns with numerous anniversaries of significant spiritual events. Not just Catholic, but also Orthodox, Protestant, and even interfaith milestones. These convergences may seem coincidental, but for those with spiritual vision, they suggest a call toward unity, not uniformity, but harmony in seeking what is good, true, and holy. And what of the Church? There are growing signs of renewal there as well, not necessarily from the top down, but from the grassroots. Lay movements are quietly flourishing. Prayer groups are expanding. Sacred traditions once neglected are being rediscovered with new reverence. Pilgrimages are rising. And with it all, there is a growing hunger not for novelty, but for what is timeless, for the spiritual treasures that have always been there, waiting to be rediscovered. Father Michel often teaches that when God is preparing to do something new, he first purifies and realigns the hearts of his people. Not through fear, but through grace. 2025, he suggests, may be just such a time. A year of spiritual pruning, not to punish, but to make room for what is more fruitful. A year when what is superficial falls away and what is eternal comes into focus. He also speaks of the importance of learning how to live in trust. That word trust is central to any preparation. For what good is planning if the soul is anchored in fear? What good are predictions if they distract us from love, forgiveness, and service? 2025, as seen through Father Michel's lens, is less about what is to come and more about how we live today in anticipation of it. That means forming habits that will sustain us not just spiritually, but emotionally and relationally. It means limiting the time we spend on things that drain our peace. It means tending to our relationships with care, restoring broken bonds, and choosing to walk humbly and generously. It means anchoring ourselves in truth when confusion is all around. This year is also a time to return to the Word, to Scripture, not as a book of mysteries to decode, but as a living conversation. Father Michel encourages believers to read the Gospels aloud in their homes, not to analyze, but to listen. To let the words shape the atmosphere. This act, though simple, becomes a shield against despair. It becomes a reminder that even in uncertain times, the Word remains stable. We are not called to be spectators of prophecy. We are called to be participants in hope. And 2025 offers us that chance, not through dramatic gestures, but through faithfulness in the present moment. So what does that mean for you right now? It means asking yourself the quiet questions. Where is your heart leaning? What in your life needs to be realigned? What habits, fears, or distractions have taken root where faith should grow? Who in your life needs to hear from you, not through advice, but through presence? It also means remembering that preparation is not a checklist, it is a lifestyle. 1,000 small decisions that slowly build a foundation that cannot be shaken. That is what 2025 is inviting us into. Not a year of doom, but a year of deeper becoming. This is not a prophecy. This is an invitation. In the next part, we will explore how spiritual disciplines like fasting, silence, and simplicity are becoming increasingly relevant in our time, not just as traditions, but as tools for navigating a world in transition. As we arrive at the closing chapter of this journey, we find ourselves not at an ending in the traditional sense, but at the threshold of a new beginning. After walking through centuries of spiritual reflection, the quiet voices of saints and mystics, and the gentle yet firm guidance echoed in the messages of Father Michel and others, one truth remains more luminous than all the rest. The most important preparation is not for a date, it is for a state of heart. Throughout this entire exploration, we've been invited not just to examine what might come, but to rediscover who we are and, more importantly, who we are becoming. The deeper purpose of these messages is not to predict, but to awaken. Not to terrify, but to clarify. Because long before any external shift occurs, a transformation must first happen within each soul. This is why, even in the most sobering of revelations, there remains a current of quiet, immovable hope. Hope that is not naive, but anchored. Hope that doesn't deny hardship, but looks beyond it. In the reflections of Father Michel, hope is not a reaction, it is a decision. A choice to believe that no matter how loud the world becomes, the voice of God still speaks with the gentleness of a whisper to those who choose to listen. And what is it that voice continues to say? Return to what matters most. Return to prayer not as obligation, but as conversation. Return to stillness not as silence, but as presence. Return to love not as sentiment, but as sacrifice. Because ultimately, the future will not be shaped solely by the movements of history, it will be shaped by the posture of hearts. And if enough hearts turn toward truth, toward light, toward compassion, then the world cannot help but follow. This is the deeper prophecy, that long before the world is changed by dramatic events, it will be changed by the quiet acts of courage born in ordinary people. The mother who forgives, the father who prays, the child who chooses kindness over cruelty. These are the true miracles. In this light, 2025 becomes more than a year, it becomes a mirror. A moment in which we are all asked, what do you truly believe? Where do you place your trust? What kind of world are you building with your words, your habits, your relationships? For some, these questions stir discomfort. For others, they awaken a long dormant desire to return to simplicity, to the joy that once came easily, the faith that once felt natural. Wherever you are on that spectrum, know this: there is no shame in beginning again. The door is always open. The invitation is never revoked. Every day is a chance to realign. And grace does not wait for perfection, it responds to sincerity. In the writings of mystics like Saint John of the Cross and Saint Teresa of Avila, we see this principle lived out. The path forward is often narrow, but it is always illuminated. It may wind through valleys and climb steep hills, but it is never without purpose. And in our time, that path continues to call us not toward escapism, but toward engagement, toward healing, toward rebuilding what has been broken in both the world and the soul. Father Michel often ends his reflections not with declarations, but with prayers, simple, heartfelt, and honest. He reminds us that the greatest power we hold is not in our ability to interpret signs, but in our willingness to respond with love. It is not the one who predicts best who is prepared, it is the one who loves most deeply. This, too, is why spiritual disciplines remain so relevant. Practices like fasting, silence, simplicity, and gratitude are not relics of the past. They are tools for today. They teach us how to resist the pull of distraction, how to cultivate presence, how to live lightly and deeply at the same time. They are the soul's way of remembering what truly satisfies. Even in the most uncertain moments, there is one thing that remains constant: the opportunity to respond with faith. Not blind faith, but living faith, a faith that acts, that listens, that serves. In a world that often equates value with visibility, God often chooses to work through the hidden and the humble. So what comes next? That is a question only time can answer. But perhaps it is not the most important question. Perhaps the better question is, who will you be when it does? Will you be someone whose light remains steady in the fog? Someone whose heart stays soft in a hardening world? Someone who doesn't need signs in the sky to remember that truth is always worth living, even when it is costly? Because in the end, the most powerful preparation is not found in stockpiles or strategies. It is found in how we treat the stranger, how we speak to those who disagree with us, how we handle disappointment, how we remember the sacred even in the mundane. This is the kind of preparation that cannot be undone by any shift in society or nature. It is eternal, and it is yours to cultivate. As we close this journey, take a moment to reflect on your own path. Not with shame, not with fear, but with hope. Because no matter where you've been, the way forward is always open, and you are never alone in walking it. If these words have touched your heart, don't let them remain ideas. Let them become actions. Begin today not with grandeur, but with grace. Light a candle, offer a prayer, write a letter of forgiveness, begin again and again and again. Because that, in the end, is the deepest truth of all. We are not called to control the future. We are called to prepare the heart. And when the heart is prepared, every day becomes sacred. Every moment becomes a step into eternity. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this message has resonated with you, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Let this video be a light passed from one heart to another. And if you feel moved to continue learning, reflecting, and preparing in peace, consider subscribing to our channel. Our goal is to build a space of light in a world of noise, a refuge of prayer, wisdom, and calm in times of uncertainty. Let us grow together. Let's reach 2,000 likes and 500 comments to help this message reach others who may need it more than we know. And if we reach that goal, our next video will explore the remarkable story of another quiet voice, for our time one whose revelations have remained hidden until now. Until then, stay faithful, stay grounded, stay hopeful, because the most powerful light in the world is the one that refuses to go out.